Demian Coorey, welcome to Speakers Tribe Conference 2020
Thank you.
in the Gold Coast, Australia, and also we're live on air on Speakers Tribe TV. Demian, I'm so excited for our conversation today, and thank you for being here. And you are a research and speaker, future of thinking thought leader. Tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Okay. I came upon the idea of the future of thinking probably about a year and a half ago. I've for many years been a futurist. And what a futurist is someone who doesn't necessarily predict the future, but it's like goes out to the fringes, goes out to the limits of what's happening, projects forward, imagines what the world is going to be like, and reports back. Now, lots of people talk about the future of technology, digital futures, that sort of thing. But my thing is, how are we going to cope with the future? We know it's very disruptive. We know there's a lot of change. And it's fascinating to see what's going to be out there. And that's what most futurists do. But, what do we do? How do we cope with that? How will we need to use our brains to cope with the world that is coming? Because one thing we know, what worked up till now will not be good enough for the future. And that is the future of thinking.
Awesome. Yeah, I understand. I think I understand what you're saying because we are living in a constantly evolving time.
Right.
I mean, we've had 4 industrial revolutions, yes, but even with that, we've had to adapt. And because we are changing so fast, sometimes if we don't look after the way we think,
Correct.
we may not adapt as fast as we are changing.
Correct.
Yeah. Can you share with us how do I do that?
Okay. The question that most people ask is, are we going to be replaced by intelligent machines? And one of the themes that I talk about is being smarter than machines, winning against the machine. Now, obviously the secret to that is doing things and being good at things that machines can't do. See, machines are very good, obviously a repetitive task, but now with intelligence built into a lot of technology, they're good at what I describe as mid-level decision-making, procedural work, analysis, routine predictions, the things that most professionals and middle managers have been taught to do. Within our generations, most of these jobs will be replaced by computer code. We need to go beyond that. It's very easy to do analysis. If you have the brain for it, and most people do, it's very easy to do that predictable mid-level decision-making. It is harder to, for instance, reach into the more creative side of our brain. Think laterally, think differently, think creatively, come up with new and innovative solutions, come up with new ideas, see new possibilities. The idea of creating change from nothing. These are things that computers can't do. Even things like social intelligence, emotional intelligence, being able to connect with people. The days of the highly paid analyst working alone in his or her little cubicle and not interacting with people, those days are numbered. Those days have been numbered by a group of computer programmers, probably in Saigon, that are creating the next generation of intelligent software. We need to be able to reach into what really makes us human. That is the future of thinking, and that is how we will win against machines.
Very cool, very cool. So we talk about the left and the right brain,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So the creative is the right.
Correct.
And the left. So we've pretty much covered and able to program the left.
Yes, that's it.
That's been covered by...
For 2,500 years, we'll be dominating that, yeah.
So we are now at the age of really expanding and cultivating the right side of our brain, which it is possible because it is quite elastic.
Yeah.
And it has just been discovered recently that it is elasticized.
Best things you can say. Seriously, I could not have put it better. It is elastic. That's a great way of putting it. But where most people have very limited thinking is they believe they're either creative or they're not. They can come up with new ideas or not. They're an ideas person or not. Most people put themselves as, the procedural, organised type of person. And creativity is kind of for, those special type of people that have a special talent. Here's what I found. Everybody can learn it. in the same way that everybody can learn to read and write, everybody can learn to add up a column of numbers, everybody can learn to be more flexible, more elastic in their thinking, and to come up with new ideas, same as everybody can learn social intelligence if they choose to, emotional intelligence if they choose to. Learning the dynamic of person-to-person influence and person-to-whole crowd influence. These are things that computers can't do. So the fact is everybody can learn it. This is what I found. And I personally have taught chief executives, accountants, receptionists, analysts, programmers, everybody, even the most left-brain analytical people.
Yes.
I've taught them.
Yeah, I believe you. I'm a testament to that. I completed accountancy degree or something, and I speak now, and I create from a story and deliver that to evoke emotion. I was a banker, but now I actually...
I was also.
Yes.
I was also
and
a banker.
even you were a physicist as well, so you were very, very formula-oriented.
Absolutely.
But now you have really circumvented that left brain into the right brain, and you're a living testament.
Correct.
Yeah.
That has
So
been my
what was
transition.
the transition there, back in those many, many decades ago?
That is the right question, Grace. It was actually a conversation with my dad. My dad was a great guy, like a really, really good guy. You know, he was a war hero. He was, there for me. He was a hero, like a lot of people's dads are. But I remember the time I was, still at uni. I was still an undergraduate, and I was visiting back home because I was living close to uni at the time in Sydney. And I was visiting back home, and I was just, about 10 o'clock at night, finishing an assignment, and the lights went out. I thought it was a blackout. Turned out not to be a blackout. My dad walked in with a candle, put it on the desk, got me to sit next to him, and he explained that the business that he'd been running for the last 10 years had failed, and he was unable to pay the electricity. This is my dad, who survived the Second World War, the most ferocious war in the history of civilization, but didn't survive the modern economy. And it was because he saw change, but thought he had time, thought he could ignore it. He was so focused on what he had always done. He was a very procedural thinker. But the beauty of it is that, okay, the business failed. He spent 2 years in the wilderness, of course, but he came back with new thinking. It was my work with my dad in those early days, in the 80s, where we were coming up with new ideas, new ways of thinking. He developed, what we call now the gig economy, like Uber, where people use their own cars, Airbnb, where people use their own houses, people use their own assets to contribute. My dad was doing that in the 80s. He was delivering work, because he had a clothing factory. He was delivering work to hundreds of people in the suburbs of Sydney with their own sewing machines who wanted to work from home. He created factories in the suburbs 20 years, 30 years before anybody else was doing it. That was where the whole idea of innovation thinking comes from. And that was the beginning of my transition. So up till then, you're right. I was really left brain, really analytical, but I knew that if I wanted to survive the changing economy, I had to find ways of coming up with new ideas. And that has been so much of the journey. In fact, I left being a banker because I was a banker as well, very analytical like you. And I eventually started a film and animation studio. Just like completely turned around. Very similar to you.
Yeah.
But the difference is I have just worked out what did I do to make that transition. That really is what I talk about.
I love that story because what it gives me is inspiration.
Yeah.
And how you really transition is you just get that little flicker of inspiration and draw from that, isn't it?
That's it. That is exactly it.
The belief, go from there.
Yeah. It is. It's so true. Like, you will never know what you do that will inspire others. I mean, I think all of us have had an experience where we've had a conversation with someone and we hardly even thought about the conversation. But years later, someone comes back and maybe reminds you of the conversation and tells you what impact it had on them.
Yes.
And like seriously, and I find this with my own son Jay, things that I've said that I didn't even think about. He told me as an adult, he's now 22, and he told me about the conversation we had when he was maybe 6, or something I just said, and he said how important that was and how it still stays with him and guides him today. You will never know the effect you have.
And that's so beautiful, because the future of thinking, like, you just don't know how you're going to impact someone's future, even just by you delivering words now, and how you're going to draw inspiration from your own conversations with others. This is a beautiful conversation. I'm so grateful. Thank you, Demian. Thank you.
It has been a rare pleasure. Thank you very much, Grace.
Thank you.
Okay.